Now the Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you, I will curse. And in you, all the families of the earth shall be blessed." So Abram went, as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him.
I have a confession to make this morning. One that I've been holding in for a while now. And I have to really get it off my chest before we can continue. You see, I hate the word blessing. I know that's my secret. So when I hear in our text this morning that Abraham was blessed to be a blessing, well, I have some work I have to do. But have you ever heard someone say, "Bless your heart," and it sounded more like a curse than a blessing? Me too. Or have you ever gone on a mission trip or spoken with someone who has, and at some point in the conversation, the sentiment is expressed, "Man, we're just blessed with so much here in America." I've heard it because I've said it. And at the time, it was the best way I knew to make sense of the incredible gap in resources that I witnessed. But I was wrong. If our resources are a result of God's favor, then a lot of people aren't favored. That's the prosperity gospel, and it's no gospel at all. All that we have is not a blessing and not from God. There are other factors at work here also. In 2010, Sandra Bullock won an Oscar for her role as Leanne Toohey in The Blind Side. In the movie, which is based upon a true story, Bullock plays an upper-class mother who adopts the teenager Michael Orr, whose biological mother is a drug addict and unable to care for him. As one might expect, there are some challenging moments along the way. And at one point, Michael even runs away. Searching for Michael, Bullock drives to the rundown apartment complex that his biological mother, lives in. And she doesn't find Michael there, but she does have an interesting and humorous exchange with the neighborhood drug dealer. The dealer makes some veiled threats toward Michael, but is quickly put in his place. With all of the protective power of a mother, Bullock bites back. If he threatens Michael, then he threatens her, and he does not want to do that. And if he so much as crosses over into her part of town, then he'll be sorry. Why? And the crowning jewel of her threat, she's in a prayer group with the district attorney. We quickly learn that for all of the physical strength that this dealer has, it's no match for an angry rich white lady. It's a scene that draws our attention to the true nature of power and privilege in our world. And let me speak for myself for just a moment. In case you haven't noticed, I'm a straight white guy living in Texas. Few people in society or the world experience more privilege than I do. And God does not love me more so that I was born to a white middle-class family in America instead of a poor brown family in Mexico. Yes, I've worked hard to be who I am today. I also know that I'm given plenty of opportunities and resources others who work just as hard and harder don't have. I can't change who I am, but I must admit that much of what I have is not the result of God's blessings, but an unfair advantage in the system. And it goes a step further. In the last decade, scandals at places like Nike and Apple showed us that we have very little idea how many of our products are made. We allow many of our things to be manufactured overseas where we don't apply the same standards of safety and opportunity that we apply to ourselves. It keeps costs cheap so that we can buy more of it, but we're not loving our neighbors as ourselves. And we are instead taking advantage of them for our own blessing. That's not God. That's sin. And if God is on a side, it's the side of the marginalized and all who fall on the wrong side of the system. We all believe a system which privileges one group of people over another is an immoral system. Some believe that we live in such a system here in America and are trying to change it. Some believe we live in a fair system, and those trying to change it are actually the ones trying to privilege it the other way. And we may not agree on what our system currently is, but we all agree that a system with unfair advantages is immoral. Yet, in our holy scriptures, in our text today, God looks like the very one making the system unfair. God blesses Abraham to make Abraham a great nation, and Israel is blessed through him in order to be a blessing to others. Yet, in much of our First Testament, we don't see Israel blessing too many other people, do we? In much of my experience reading the Bible, and especially our First Testament, is 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. God calls Abraham to leave the known for the unknown and pursue a new path. The calling gives Abraham so much courage that he's able to set out on this journey, forfeiting his own safety, all because of the knowledge that he is special to God. 3 steps forward. But not long into the story, Abram all but prostitutes his wife Sarah out to the Egyptian Pharaoh because he is afraid. Where did your courage go so quickly, Abram? Twice, Abram passes Sarah off as his sister to be married to other men. Abram, blessed by God. But if that blessing doesn't even make it to his wife, then what good is it? And how are we ever supposed to believe that it'll make it to the nations? 2 steps back. Generations later, God sees the Israelites enslaved in Egypt, and God hears their cries and moves to liberate them. And we see clearly that God is on the side of the oppressed and the persecuted. It's a powerful story that will become the primary narrative slaves in America will use to understand their suffering, to maintain hope, and to find the courage to resist. 3 steps forward. Yet, so very soon after that, Joshua is leading Israel to destroy and oppress weaker people groups and take their land. And they even claim that God told them to do it. And in the generations to come, each time they have the chance and the power, they'll do it again. How are they to be a blessing to all nations when they can't even get along with their neighbors? 3 steps back. Our Bible is a beautiful and brutal book. Critics can't see the beauty of the book through all of its brutality, while many religious people work to ignore, or worse, justify the brutality. When we pretend the 2 steps back isn't there, we end up speaking a language about our faith that no one understands or cares to understand. Luckily, we have some built-in safeguards within our First Testament itself that help us understand where the narrative was always headed. The prophets come along in the 8th through the 6th centuries BCE, and one of their common messages is that through Abram, Israel was called to be a blessing to all nations, but they failed when they kept it all to themselves. N.T. Wright says Israel was set up to be a lighthouse to the world. But where they got it wrong is they took all of the windows out of the upper story of the lighthouse and replaced it with mirrors so that the light was kept in, shining on themselves instead. With Israel's blessing and election comes responsibility. But instead of acting out of responsibility, they act out of privilege. And they elevate their chosenness above their responsibility. And the prophets come along and let us know that despite what Israel wanted to believe, they were never supposed to attack and enslave their neighbors. They were always intended to be a blessing. God's choosing of Abram and Israel through him is not to create a special nation superior to all the rest or an elite class of person. You see, it's nothing new for an ancient Near East tribal god to pick one people, one tribe, one family over the rest. That's what tribal gods do. And every tribe, every family told that story. They all had a God that said that they were better than everyone else. And religions are still making that claim today. No, our God is doing something very different. God's choosing of the one person, Abram, is God's choosing of all people like Abram. Abram is told that his descendants will be as numerous as the grains of sand on the beach, that they'll number as many as the stars in the sky. That's the Bible's way of saying that through Abram, God chooses all people to be God's children. This is what is shocking about this text. God's calling of the one wouldn't be to the exclusion of any others, but is an embrace of all others. It's a completely new paradigm, one that we're still working to understand. Because until this point, for God to choose one people, then another had to be left unchosen. For one to be elevated, then it has to be above someone else. But those are the old rules. And God is not bound by that paradigm, nor will God play that game any longer. God's favor and love is not a zero-sum commodity. That's what the message has been from the beginning. God's love will not run out. In calling one beloved, God calls us all beloved. This is 3 or 4 or 5 steps forward because no person would ever come up with that on their own, especially one living in a world like Abram's. The human ego almost always wants to compare ourselves to someone else, to be better than someone else, and to move past that, even for just a moment, must be a gift from God and divinely inspired. And that is what God is calling us to do today. To move past thinking that we are blessed or loved more than anyone else. Our group, be it country, religion, or ethnicity, is special to God because all people are special to God. But we are no more beloved than any of God's other people groups. And that doesn't diminish our belovedness. It enhances all belovedness. Most of us are, however, quite privileged. Our privilege is largely out of our control, but our job is to be aware of it and use it to bring as much equality to the system and good to others as we can. But we shouldn't be surprised if we end up benefiting more from the work than anyone else. For those of you who know our very own Sam Tinsley, it's an understatement to say that he's a numbers man. Sam has his PhD in mathematics and was a professor. In his retirement, he's been deeply touched to use his skill to tutor elementary and middle school students who are refugees from Burma. He connected with the students through other Wilshire families, the Dements and the Woodburys, who met these friends at Wallace Elementary School. About 20% of Wallace's population is refugees from Burma, which is one of the things both the Woodburys and the Dements love about their school. And their friendship began by playing soccer together on a team that Darren Dement coaches, and it grew from there. Now the students, well, they're a part of the family. And each Wednesday, Sam gets to go over to the Woodburys and share his love for math with students from Burma who are glad that Sam loves math. I sure could have used a Sam Tinsley when I was in middle school. And it's a beautiful way that Sam can give back. But he was the first to tell me, oh, I get way more out of it than they do. Brene Brown says that the difference between privilege and entitlement is gratitude. And we show our gratitude by using the resources and opportunities that we have as a result of both our hard work and our privileges to the good of others. We walk with others and use our influence where we can. It's what it means to follow a way other than our own. We cannot choose whether the system will unfairly advantage us or not, but we can choose what we do with the advantage. We can hoard it for ourselves, replacing the upper windows of the lighthouse of our souls with mirrors and turn in on ourselves. Or we can choose to shine out for others as best we know how and work to create a fair system. Together, may we be the spiritual descendants of Abram that we were always called to be, shining together like all of the stars of the sky. Amen.